actually nothing like hard meat. It is hard meat because you're eating muscle and not eating meat. The other thing I'll say about our domestic market, we have tried to continuously increase the knowledge within the sector, especially within the people trading with meat. And again, we've done a lot of work with the team that's doing Expo, even outside the Expo, again supported a lot by Gatsby, previously Kenya Market Trust, to work with specific retailers and see how can we improve the meat, the environment, the cooking of meat that is offered in select pilot butcheries that we use, particularly in the pork sector, that has really, really grown very quickly. We do hope as we continue, PS, we keep asking and requesting that we look into reviving the Kenya Institute of Meat Training, Kenya Meat Training Institute in Athi River, because we still see a lot of meat cutters vis-a-vis meat butchers. And that would also improve the amount of sales and quality and economics that we're getting out of meat. So that would go to becoming a source for employees for the retail sector. And then we stop exporting labor or people to South Africa to train, because that institution would really cure that gap. So we hope to have greater interactions over the next 1 week. We want you to spread the word. Let Kenyans come and experience the sizzling that has been set out, and again, to enjoy the various cuts of meat. Thank you very much.
Thank you. She kept the promise. Thank you so much, Wamboi. I now want to invite Lieutenant Colonel Kinuthia from Kenya Meat Commission to make his remarks. Karibu.
PS, State Department of Livestock Development, CEO, Nation Media Group, all the strategic partners, and all participants, good morning. I'm delighted to be here because KMC comes at the tail end of the livestock value chain, as our role is to offer market and pay premium prices to our livestock farmers. And that's our mandate, which we are doing by increasing production within the factory to ensure that as we talk about revolutionizing the meat industry, I think there cannot be, the best revolution we can talk about is to ensure the livestock farmer has money in their pocket. And this is the way we can be able to ensure that at the grassroots, everyone is economically empowered to be able to live a decent life, which we all desire. There are several issues as KMC we have noted, which we wish they are addressed. Because when you talk about you are at the tail edge and you want to offer quality meat products, there cannot be quality meat products without quality raw materials. The raw materials is the livestock. But I think this is where the challenge is. We have been told about the export market is growing. We have very good prospect from China. They want to open that market, especially for beef. And we have these millions and millions of livestock in Kenya. The question we should be asking ourselves at the end of this Meat Expo, do they meet the quality required in those markets so that we can compete? Because when you talk about that market, it's not only Kenya that is looking for that market, but the entire world. How do we position ourselves so that as we canvas for that market, we have quality that meets that market? And I think this is the revolution that we should be talking about. And we have found that basic things within the animal husbandry, they are really causing a lot of losses to us as producers or the people who are adding value basic things like deworming, you find yourself condemning all the red ovals. Per animal, you lose like 3,000, one animal, just because of a basic animal husbandry, like deworming. Then you slaughter a very nice bull, over 500 kgs, but it has liver fluke. I think the veterinary doctors who are here understand those things. And then you end up losing 4 kgs, 3 kgs of liver. You look at, in line with the bottom-up beta, we are talking about the leather value chain. Here is KMC, we slaughter. For us, all our leather, we are offering it to the leather tanneries in Kenya, who are converting it into finished leather products. But one of the challenges we are facing is defects from tick bites. I think anyone who understands leather production will associate with this. I think prevention of or control of ticks is also a basic animal husbandry thing that we can be able to do and produce the quality leather that we want. So that instead of importing leather products, why can't we use our own leather? And I'm very sure it is enough to meet our domestic market and also be able to export. And I think this also anchors to our theme: how do we put more money into the pockets of our livestock producers in Kenya? I think as I conclude my remarks, I hope that as we also address the issue of food security, in Kenya, we have had a challenge where we have very good seasons. Like now, it's very good season for livestock. Then, from the meteorological department, we are likely in the next few years again to face a very severe drought. But how are we prepared to ensure that we reduce the severity of this drought? And I'm very happy that today, or within these 3 days, we'll be discussing about fodder production so that we prevent those issues of cycling drought. And also, how can we address the issue of the right time to harvest? For KMC, we have the capacity to produce corn beef. And I think it's one of the best ways to increase the shelf life of the meat products. Because once you produce the corn beef, it has a shelf life of 5 good years. So, sir, in terms of food security, I know corn beef was included in the strategic food reserve. How can we actualize that so that you give the opportunity to the meat industry producers? How can we now take these animals when they are in their prime weight, when we can get the highest yield and be able to convert them into corn beef, which has a shelf life of 5 years. It's an opportunity even for export, and even to improve on our food security. I think, sir, as I add, I'll say that through this expo, we have seen Kenyans now appreciating what is quality meat product. If you look at the theme for the first expo, it was on what is meat. It's not the issue of muscles versus meat. And we have seen Kenyans appreciate. And I think if we continue with this discussion, then it means we will be able to change the way Kenya consumes meat and even enlighten more Kenyans on livestock production so that we are able to get more value. So I hope at the end of this conference, the things we'll discuss will form a building block towards improving the meat production in Kenya. Because with over 15 counties depending on livestock production, then I think talking about 12% contribution to GDP for livestock farmers, I feel it may be on a lower side. How can we perhaps double this? Then we'll see change in the lifestyle of all those 15 counties. I think, sir, I will add there, and I want also to wish all of us the best experience in this third Kenya Meat Expo. I wish you all the best, and let's form a good platform that will ensure that livestock industry takes the right place in terms of economic development in Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our chief guest, as I exit the stage, I just want to say that my grandmother used to keep meat in ash in a pot that could last for a whole year, waiting for visitors. The moment you visit her, she removes it from the ash, dusts it, puts it in warm water to soften, and then she cooks. But technology, Bwana PS, has now changed. So as we look at technological development, we are looking at the soil that produces feed and fodder. Then we are looking at the animals, aspects of animal breeding. We want to get quality animals with good marbling that grow very fast and have higher weight so that we exploit this export market. And with that, I want to invite Brian. Thank you so much. We are going, this other side, we have a lot of nyama choma, so you can experience the sizzling experience for the Kenyan people. Thank you so much. Asanteni sana.
Thank you, Bwana Chair of the Secretariat, for that session. I promise you I'll share my earnings with you once I'm done moderating. Ladies and gentlemen, we are already into the agenda. Clearly, the conversation is now shaping from what is meat to now other influencing or other peripheral factors that are now seen as very significant in the production of meat end to end, from farm to plate. And as the conversation rages on, it's now time to ask ourselves, we've just had a season of a lot of rainfall. And I think this we talked about in the RAFS project, Dr. Sarah, about 4 months ago in February with the AU IBA. Why should we, for example, as a country, be having a season of rain at this time, wait until there is a season of drought, no fodder has been harvested, none has been put in silage or anything of the sort, and then we wait again to come and complain about drought. And then we now start either of taking animals or livestock at a very cheap rate, which does not give value to the farmer, and that also is not as top quality. So if we want to play at those international levels where we are a significant source of quality meat, then we have to have a wholesome conversation end to end, from farm to plate. So downstream up to the upstream of taker. And ladies and gentlemen, which is why we want to now build this conversation further by another set of speakers who would like to ask to be really brief and to the point. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to invite Gatsby Africa representative, Sam Kareithi, who is the country director. As he comes, just a bit about Gatsby Africa is an ambitious and dynamic organization committed to sector transformation and helping change lives for the better in East Africa. In livestock particularly, they are supporting Kenya to develop a modern and competitive meat sector, whilst also innovating models that maximize the extent livestock producers participate in and benefit from higher returns from the sector. Most welcome, sir.
Bwana PS and CEO of Nation Media Group, all protocols observed. Thank you, Brian. I think I'll share my salary with you because you've done my job now. It's quite good. Indeed, it's a delight. This is the third time that Gatsby is involved in the Meat Expo. I think we've been there since the first one, which was mainly on food safety. And it's good to see just how we've grown to start talking about other value chain issues, exports, and it's listening to Nicholas just how far we have come in just a few years. And it's really a delight. Just have a minute to just talk a little bit more about Gatsby because it's a good moment because we are talking about livestock and livestock has a lot of protein. Gatsby also has a similar program on commercial aquaculture. And Kenya has similar problems in aquaculture, very high demand, very good demand dynamics, very low production, and poor quality, poor genetics, just the whole story again, like we are seeing in livestock. And it's one of the other areas that we also are working in very closely with livestock. Bwana PS, it's been talked about the issue of demand. There's so much demand for livestock. And 2 days ago, someone kept asking, so why is it not happening? And I'm sure we'll be able to see from the speakers and the practitioners in here just why sometimes you don't connect the dots. My good sister from Samburu talked about fodder, for instance. And every other speaker is talking about an aspect of livestock that needs to connect the dots to make it happen for all of us. The way GASB works is in a way that normally looks for where there is synergy, strategic partnerships that are aligned in a way that we can catalyze the momentum for livestock. Therefore, whether it's other development partners, we are closely working with the Gates Foundation as well, and also with the very, very, very ambitious and committed State Department of Livestock, Asante Sana Bona PS, because this is very well noted how this department has been committed to this. We also like to align with other national government agendas, particularly the better approach and supporting the government in fulfilling that. And therefore, we're working across the chain where we can support and align with the better approach as well. Our involvement in livestock as well is mainly around the secondary production, not because the other areas of production are not important, they're very important, but it's simply because the secondary production is where we see a better entry point of already existing stock that can actually be turned around very quickly to high quality to meet the market demands that are there already. So issues of fodder, issues of feedlots and how we access the markets and the market dynamics around good quality meat ending in the market, in the farmer markets, is an area that we are very interested in. Our expectation today as I finish is that we as participants, all of us, will bring our best forward to address the key issues that drive this sector. So across the whole chain, let's also for where there are roadblocks and where success can be found, where solutions can be found, whether there are issues to do with driving finance, driving the breeds that can give us the kind of stock that we need, the market issues that are there, the connecting the dots across the market. Let us talk to one another and find solutions through the 3 days. Asanteni sana.
Very well. I'll be speaking to your secretary shortly to send an invoice for that. Ladies and gentlemen, last year, I think in the last about 5 years or so, this is research according to the RAFS project, which is Resilience this is Resilient African Feed and Fodder Systems. It's a research by the African Union, IBA. Shows that in the last about 5 years or so, 9.5 million livestock that are in the meat sector, I'm talking about goats and cows, died due to drought. And these were things that could possibly be avoided. We will quantify it later. Dr. Sarah will be on the panel. We'll quantify it later and look at a business case for that, just to help build up that conversation on why it is important for us now to have that end-to-end conversation around feed and fodder. To extend further on this, allow me to welcome the Director of Resilience and Food Security, Feed the Future Coordinator for USAID, Kenya and East Africa, Andrew McCown, to come and make his opening remark. Andrew, most welcome.
Habari za asubuhi. Hope I got that right. P.S. Jonathan Mweke, it's a pleasure to see you. CEO Nation Media, Stephen Gitagama, esteemed guests, partners, ladies and gentlemen, it's really, really wonderful to be with you here this morning at an event that we all know is aimed at promoting economic opportunities in the livestock sector. We know that by increasing incomes for livestock producers and creating jobs, especially for Kenyan youth, we can leverage the vast business opportunities within the meat value chain. First, I want to express my gratitude to all the partners who've organized this expo, namely the government of Kenya, the State Department of Livestock, our partners in ACDI VOCA, the Nation Media Group, AU IBAR, the Retail Traders Association, Gatsby Africa, the list goes on. This year's expo provides an invaluable platform for stakeholders in the livestock sector to establish connections and strategic partnerships, and we are very proud as USAID to partner with you all in support of such a critical event. The meat market in Kenya is projected to grow by 10% by the year 2028. This growth presents substantial opportunities for job creation, of course, and economic development for the country as a whole. USAID supports Kenya's livestock sector, and this underscores our commitment to economic transformation that aligns with the bottom-up economic transformation agenda and Vision 2030. We remain a strong partner with the government of Kenya and the private sector, and through that collaboration, we have facilitated improved production, aggregation, market system strengthening and development by supporting local Kenyan institutions that work with livestock producers. Our efforts include working with over 60 producer cooperatives, 50 livestock markets, and county chambers of commerce in particular ASAL counties. Additionally, of note, USAID has established a 6 billion shilling Impact for Northern Kenya fund, known as the INK Fund, through our USAID Kuza activity that supports the growth of businesses in livestock producing areas. USAID strengthens Kenya's meat sector through activities like USAID Kuza, and also notably through our livestock market systems activity represented here today. I want to share with you a quick story about one beneficiary of our activities, a young woman named Miriam, an entrepreneur from Turkana County. Miriam started with a small herd of goats, struggling to make ends meet in one of Kenya's most arid regions. Through the support of USAID Kuza, Miriam received training in livestock management and business skills, and with this knowledge, she was able to expand her herd and started a small business selling goat milk and meat. Today, Miriam employs several youth from her community and contributes to local job creation and economic growth. Her story really is a testament to the transformative power of the kinds of targeted support that we can offer and the vast potential that lies within Kenya's livestock sector. A second quick success story I want to highlight is from Isiolo County. Our livestock market systems activity supported Irene Wangui, a 28-year-old entrepreneur with just a $300 grant. Initially a chicken farmer, Irene faced financial difficulties like many of us did during the COVID-19 pandemic. She ventured into rearing black soldier fly larvae, which convert food waste into high-quality protein for animal feed. This innovation lowered her feed costs and enabled her to train youth groups on insect farming. Irene's business, Masha Feeds Limited, now employs 3 full-time staff, and she has increased her poultry from 30 to 500 chicken and has significantly contributed to community resilience and job creation where she is from in Isiolo. Finally, I just want to end by saying that, Kenya, with about 80% of its land classified as arid and semi-arid, faces a number of challenges. We all know that, including climate change, fluctuating rainfall and water scarcity, to say nothing of economic shocks. Recent shocks, such as the worst desert locust infestation in over 70 years, COVID-19, a drought that affected 4.5 million people countrywide, and the Ukraine war's impact on inflation and food costs, and El Nino rains, of course, have greatly affected the country. Additionally, increased human settlement, significant land fragmentation, and severe degradation of grazing areas have compounded all of these issues and conflicts. To navigate these challenges and achieve its development objectives, Kenya really does need an economic development master plan for the ASALs, as it does for the entire country, that can be reconciled and seen by development partners and investors as something to support and get behind. We at USAID are committed to contributing to this master plan development and implementation. We are going to guide resource allocation to strategic areas identified by this plan that can help elevate Kenya from lower middle income country status and increase its resilience. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. And I hope together we can continue to work to revolutionize Kenya's meat industry and achieve sustainable economic transformation and partnership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I'm particularly very amazed by the examples you're giving of those young Kenyans who are doing well for themselves in the meat sector. And I hope this interests more young people to take part in this sector. I hope this gives you the hope that there is something for you in this. And as you can see, even if you're following from home, there's a lot of support in the industry. You have market linkages, you have production support, you have financiers, you have development partners who are here to always hold your hand and show you the way in the industry. So please take part, because I am personally taking part in it. Ladies and gentlemen, the next speaker is from AU IBA. And AU IBA is African Union, is an African Union organization that was founded in 1951 to study the epidemiology situation and fight rinderpest in Africa. AU IBA's mandate covers all aspects from animal resources, including livestock, fisheries, and wildlife across the entire African continent. It also fills a unique and strategic niche by working at the continental and regional levels, with RECs being key partners. Dr. Huyam Sali, the director of AU IBA, is here with us, and she will be coming to speak on their mandate and especially why they are very, very passionate about having conversations on feed and fodder sector. Dr. the floor is yours. Most welcome.
Honorable PS, CEO of Nation Media Group, all partners, representatives of USAID, Gates Foundations, and Gatsby, all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, with all the protocol observed. It is with great pleasure that I congratulate Kenya for holding its third Meat Expo, giving prominence, visibility, and decorum to an important economic sector for strategic importance to achieve the bottom-up economic transformation agenda known as BETA envisioned in this country. Honorable PS and guests, the focus of this event revolutionized the meat industry for bottom-up economic transformation calls us to reflect upon the livestock sector, and particularly the meat subsector, as an important economic sector to achieve BETA objectives. Africa holds the third of global animal populations, and the huge continental and global resources on average livestock contribute by 24.9% to the GDP. In some countries and regions in Africa, livestock is fastest growing agriculture sector, out-competing food and cash crop sectors. For at least 18 countries in Africa, increases in value added by tropical livestock unit is a driver of GDP per capita growth. And Kenya has one of the largest livestock herds on the continent and is among the forerunners in developing its livestock sector. Africa also has a huge youth dividend expected to generate 11 to 15% of the GDP growth between 2011 to 2030. And youth are expected to be the helm of shaping the future of this sector. Animal-sourced foods, including meat, are the fastest growing food subcategory in Africa, driven by rapid urbanization and a growing more affluent middle class. So the demand for the livestock products in Africa is anticipated not only to grow fast, but also more quickly than in most other regions of the world, from 51 USD billion annually to be tripled to 151 millions by 2050. However, Africa's consumption of livestock source proteins remains very low, at 12.2 grams per capita per day, which is less than the half of the global average of 26 per 8 grams. So despite the huge animal population in Africa, there is lack of capacity in domestic production and shortage in livestock products to meet the demand. For that, the continent is importing animal products estimates on 4 billion annually. In African Union, we measured within the CADA Biennial Review report the fund from the public to the agriculture and livestock sector. So the latest biennial review, 2023, has reported very low levels of livestock sector spending against the indicator of LIDESA that suppose at least 30% of the public agriculture expenditure to be invested in livestock sector. So for the period from 2015 up to 2022, an average of 19.35% of agriculture expenditure in livestock sector. And during this period, in 2015, it was 30.82%, and then increased in 2020 to 15%, but then decreased again in 2022 to 12%, with only 5 countries in the continent expending more than 15% in the sector. So within the discussion on the different major challenges for livestock production systems in Africa, the key one is the climate change, which impacting on lack of pasture and quality feed, and also scarcity of water resources. In addition to the other management gaps represented in lack of systematic breeding and animal genetics improvement with poor marketing and trade. AUIPAR, as the Inter-African Bureau for Animal Resources, is mandated by the African Union member states to lead the development of the Africa's animal resources. We are guided by the Livestock Strategy for Africa, and with generous support from our development partners, we are working with the livestock actors, aiming to enhance the capacity for the livestock sector so that it can deliver and cover the demands to ensure the nutrition security, and also to ensure smooth flow of livestock within the African continental free trade area, with also the international trade. So AUIPAR strategic plans is to improve the sustainable animal production and health, and to enhance the market access and the compliance with the SPS measures. These plans are aiming to increase sustainable and resilient production and investments, engaging more private sector and more women and youth along the value chains. Currently, we are implementing one or two of the key projects that contributing to the livestock sustainable production, which are the first one, the RAFS, the Resilient Animal Feed and Fodder System project, and the African Pastoral Market Development Platform. And for these 2 projects, Kenya is a targeted country, beside other projects for fisheries and also SPS. So, Honorable Principal Secretary and guests, please receive once again the highest assurance of AUIPAR that IPAR will remain a partner with Kenya in the efforts to harness the potential of its livestock sector and the meat value chain. I thank you all, and asante sana.
Thank you, Dr. Ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on well. I'd now want to invite the leadership of Nation Media Group to continue with the program from this point. It is now my singular honor to invite the Group Chief Executive Officer of Nation Media Group, Stephen Gitagama. Pigia boss yangu makofi bana, tafadhali.
You know, Brian is negotiating something. So he thinks by clapping for me, he'll get it. He has to work very hard. So I think for the interest of time, I will not bore you with too many words, but I will I'm actually feeling that we should be out there feasting on the meat. I think the meat is getting cold. So we need to wind up, tumalize alafu tuende tukakule nyama kiasi fulani. So our Principal Secretary, Bwana Jonathan Mweke, from the State Department of Livestock Development, all our partners, our invited guests, all protocols observed. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Thank you very much. Now, I think it gives me great pleasure to be here today as we start our third edition of the Meat Expo, which we started in partnership with a number of you partners who are here in 2021. And it's a great progress. The last edition, the second edition of the Meat Expo, which was held here, was a great success to us. We had 50 exhibitors and over 10,000 participants. That tells you the kind of interest that this had. Now, that has moved significantly this year. We have over 70 exhibitors, and we expect many, many participants to visit our various stands and to actually interact with various exhibitors on various issues. Now, this sector is critical to this economy. We have been told it contributes 12% of the national GDP. And in addition to that, it contributes over about 50% of the employment in the agriculture sector. That means the sector supports about 10 million Kenyans. That's a significant sector. If you look at the neighboring countries of Somalia, Ethiopia, and a significant part of Sudan and Tanzania, this sector is a major employer. It's a sector that employs many people. It feeds many people. So it's a sector that cannot be ignored, and that's why we have our Principal Secretary here. And the theme of this third edition, revolutionizing the meat industry for bottom-up economic transformation, is relevant, and it tells you the importance of the sector because it is a sector that, in my view, it's still underutilized. It's a sector that could contribute close to 20% of our GDP and could support almost 20 million of our population. So it's a sector which, if properly harnessed, and the discussions that we are going to have later, where we're looking at the back end and the front end and the full value chain, is a very significant discussion that we hope at the end of the 3-day will have a significant impact on our economy. Now, despite all this importance of this sector, the sector faces a number of challenges. There are challenges. Right now, we are having good weather, but be sure that after about 4 or so months, that will change, and our livestock farmers will start having complaints of all nature. I think we need to avoid that. We need to avoid panic situations, but have a country where we can have throughout the year, our livestock is taken care of, and therefore that will take care of our pockets. Most of you here feed and will eat a meat product every day. That tells you the potential that we have in the sector. Now, ladies and gentlemen, revolutionizing the meat industries requires a shift towards sustainable and ethical production practices. Small-scale farmers who form the backbone of the Kenya agricultural sectors must be empowered with the knowledge and the resources to adapt practices that prioritize animal welfare, environmental conservation, and food safety. This will not only ensure long-term viability of the industry, but also align with global trends towards more responsible consumption. Now, we live in an era where technology is a center of what we do. We have been told technology keeps changing every day. We need to use, as part of our theme today, of revolutionizing the meat industry, how can we tap on technology? Technology and the advancement in this sector from precision in terms of farming techniques to blockchain-enabled traceability solutions can modernize the industry, enhance productivity, transparency, and accountability through the value chain. Using technology, we can know where the markets are, who needs what product, and who is able to provide what inputs. Now, but perhaps most importantly, revolutionizing the meat industry demands a collaborative effort involving the stakeholders from government, and that's why our principal sector is here, the industry, associations, to civil society organizations, and consumers themselves. This is the core reason why we initiated this conference, and by bringing together the producers, processors, retailers, policymakers, consumers, and other stakeholders in the meat industry, we create a wholesome platform to discuss and provide an avenue for positively transforming the industry. As a media house, we use our various platforms to enhance visibility of Kenya's livestock product locally and globally, while also showcasing the Kenya's sustained initiatives to produce high-quality products. You'll also notice that we have several exhibition stands providing a platform for stakeholders to interact more intimately and with the targeted consumer. I'm looking forward to a fruitful discussion and as we build on the bankability of the livestock business, because I believe the entrepreneurs who are here, they are looking for avenues to make money, to make sustainable business and to make profitable business. I strongly believe by fostering the partnership and the dialogue in the industry, we can address the systematic challenges, advocate for policy reforms, and promote inclusive growth that benefits everyone involved. Now, the potential for revolutionizing the meat industry in Kenya is vast, and it requires concerted effort for us to realize it. And that explains why we have this expo. Now, together, as we work towards a future where the meat industry not only thrives, but also serves as a catalyst for economic transformation and achieves our better agenda, the bottom-up economic transformation in this country. So I'm confident that this expo, by the end of the 3 days, will lead to some fruitful outcomes to all the players. And at the end of the day, we'll have a significant impact on the economy of this nation. So I will end there, and you can clap for me. So I want to get instructions. Yes. Okay. So I've been requested to invite our chief guest, the Principal Secretary, State Department for Livestock Development, Honorable Jonathan Mweke, who himself is a livestock farmer. And I think he should tell us what he does with, as he does this livestock business. And Karibu, you can clap for our PS. Thank you.
The Group CEO of our partner, Nation Media, Mr. Stephen Gitagama, the Director, African Director of AU IBA, Madam Dr. Huyam Salih, Gatsby Africa, Country Director Sam Karevi, USAID Representative Andrew McCowan, who we co-chair the Agriculture Sector Development Partners organization with, my colleagues from the ministry, strategic partners, exhibitors, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning again. I'm very happy to be here with you today as we launch this year's 3rd edition of the Kenya Meat Expo. You realize the theme for this year is revolutionizing the meat industry for economic bottom-up economic transformation agenda. This, in plain English, means we are commercializing the livestock sector. There's a lot of initiatives that are being done to create an economic activity around livestock. We've heard here that livestock generates about 12% into our GDP. And the GDP really measures economic growth. Therefore, our economic transformation for livestock, we would like that to grow from 12% to about 20%, which then will bring significant growth to our livestock sector. As we embark on commercializing this sector, we have taken a value chain approach so that we can bring all actors from production to aggregation to value addition and manufacturing all the way to the market together, connect the dots, as Sam Kareithi said, and work as one unit so that we can commercialize our sector and put money into the pockets of all the actors in this sector, create jobs, and develop a viable export development plan. So we started this journey of commercializing our sector from the market. We wanted to understand demand-supply dynamics. So we've done a route-to-market strategy for the meat sector so that we can really understand what is the size of the market, where are the opportunities, who are the players in this market, what part of that market can we attain our market share, and what is it we need to do to break the barriers of entry into this market. And what we found, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, it is a huge market. There's big demand globally for animal-based protein, meat, and dairy. And as Kenya, we are strategically placed because we already have the resources, 22 million herds of cattle, over 35 million goats, 24 million sheep. We have the resources. What is it that we need to do to produce what the market wants? We found the market wants quality beef products or meat products. It wants quantity, so the huge quantities, and it wants those both things consistently so that we don't provide a product today and then tomorrow it's not available. That has now led us to make some very key strategic interventions in the production sector so that we can ensure that our Kenyan farmers and producers can produce exactly what the market needs. To do this, we worked with all stakeholders. We put together academia, research institutions, market players. A lot of you here are the market players out in industry. Government and semi-autonomous government agencies. Development partners. All in one room where we're able to think very deeply about the interventions that we need to ensure that we produce for the market, and we produce competitively in a sustainable manner. We discovered three things. Number one, we urgently need to improve the breed of our animals. We need to improve the breed so that we get breeds that produce optimally productivity in the environment we have here in Kenya, especially in the northern region where a lot of our livestock is found. Breeds that can go from birth to slaughter weight quickly with very little investment in feed. Breeds that are drought resistant, disease resistance, and breeds that can gain the weight that we need very quickly. We put together a team that was headed by an organization called KAGRIC, Kenya Animal Genetic Resources Center, an organization within the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development, who do multiplication of animal semen. We put together people from the university, people from ILRI, International Livestock Research Institution, CALRO, the Kenya Agricultural Research Organization, and some development partners, and the breeding associations. And with that, we've been able to come up with a national breed improvement program, which we are now executing. We now understand which breeds to promote. The indigenous Boran breed is a very good breed that we have here in Kenya that we've not marketed enough. A lot of the countries globally have come here, gotten our genetics for the Boran, developed those genetics, and now are claiming the Boran as theirs. We need to reclaim Boran as an indigenous Kenyan breed that produces quality beef for the market. Secondly, we spoke about issues feed. Feed has been a big thorn in the flesh of our industry. We faced drought. The worst drought in 40 years was just a few years ago. It claimed 2.5 million herds of cattle, worth about 500 billion shillings. And a lot more when you look at the cattle that survived but lost significant weight. So we have put very specific interventions in the animal feed and fodder area of livestock. We have now developed, as a State Department of Livestock, a national feed, animal feed balance sheet so that we can monitor the amount of feed that we are producing. We are working with several partners, the RAFS project here by AU IBA. We are working with FAO, the Food and Agricultural Organization, on the hand-in-hand program. We are working with Gatsby on animal feed as well. We are working with Kenya Development Corporation through one of the projects in my State Department called DRIVE, De-risking Investments and Value Enhancement, that works in 23 of the ASAL counties, where we are de-risking private sector to entice them to come into commercial feed and fodder production. We are extending loans from government through KDC of under 10% with up to 24 months, grace period over 10 years, something that you won't find in the commercial banking ecosystem, so that we can invite investors to come and fix our animal feed deficit, ensure that our animals have adequate feed and lower the cost of production so that we can be competitive both here locally and globally with our animal products. With this program, we are also offering large tracts of government land that have been lying idle and unproductive. A few months ago, our cabinet, chaired by His Excellency President Ruto, approved a program called the Land Commercialization Initiative, where we're able to offer to private sector large tracts of land for fodder and pasture production for our animals. I think we need to do more, especially in the storage and post-harvest losses in animal feed. Just yesterday and the day before, we were in Laikipia with the Gates Foundation. I see Obai Khalifa here, Gatsby, and private sector, and several other livestock stakeholders, where we were working on developing a national beef strategy. And we saw lots and lots of grass this high in Laikipia, everywhere we drove. My friends, when it dries up around October, if we don't harvest this grass, we bale it, we pellet it, we store it, it will all be gone. And we'll be facing another drought where we lose our animals. So we need to figure out how to harvest that and ensure that we mitigate on post-harvest losses. The third intervention is around animal health. We all know a sick animal is not just bad for human consumption, but it's very bad for trade. We are working with the counties and have agreed with them on how to implement a national vaccination program, which will be coordinated by national government with the partnership of all the counties. We want to eradicate FMD disease in our cows and PPR in our sheep and goat. Indeed, the AU IBA has a program that's funded by the European Commission to eradicate PPR in all of Africa, and we've been speaking with Dr. Huyam here how we are going to plug in and ensure that our country can gain from that program. So we will be vaccinating all our cattle, all our goats, all our sheep, and indeed, President Ruto pronounced himself on Madaraka Day on the same program. We've already designed it, and the rollout is in process. We also need to take care of other diseases, like were mentioned here by the gentleman from KMC, ticks, worms, and just general animal husbandry to ensure that our cattle, our goats, our sheep, our pigs, camels, and all other value chains reach the productivity levels that would like to enable us to play in the global market. These three initiatives are critical to ensure that we meet what the market wants: quality, quantity, consistently. And with that, we will become a major player as Kenya in the global livestock market. There are some enablers that we have come up with, again, as government and other stakeholders, to ensure that we support these three initiatives. Number one is legislation. We've developed a livestock bill that is very progressive, that has all the input of stakeholders, that will work to commercialize our livestock sector. Some highlights of this bill is to anchor into law some of our institutions, like the Meat Training Institute, the Livestock Training Institute, the Animal Health and Industry Health Institute, AHITI, and other institutes that we have, National Beekeeping Institute. Our farms, anchor them in law so that we can use them to produce human resource that can go out there in the sector to enable them to produce and produce competitively. With this livestock bill, we are creating something that has been largely missing in our livestock sector, a livestock marketing council that will be largely led by the private sector and ensure that we can position our country as a premium beef, goat, red meat, poultry producer globally. So with that, we'll need to brand our livestock like we've branded our livestock products, like we've branded our coffee and our tea. We'll need to market it. We'll need to promote it for export. And we'll need a stamp of quality so that the whole world can know that if you're getting livestock products from Kenya, you're getting a quality product. So that is coming in the livestock bill. It was passed in cabinet a few months ago. It has gone through the Attorney General in a record 1 month, and it is now in Parliament. Just yesterday, I spoke with the leader of majority, the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, and he promised me once he's done with the finance bill, he's going to prioritize the passing in Parliament of the livestock bill so it can be assented into law and it can govern our industry. Another enabler that we are very proud of, that has been elusive for the last 14 years, is a livestock identification and traceability system. We all know Now, globally, traceability is extremely important for food items and the food system, and countries are not going to import your products if you cannot trace them to the farm from where they came from. So we are going to get a system in the next few months. The tendering process is underway, and once we get a suitable vendor, we will be rolling out livestock identification and traceability, which will register all our livestock as resources. It will be able to track the feeding regimes, the nutrition regimes of our livestock. It will be able to track disease control in terms of deworming, cattle dipping for ticks, vaccinations, and all of that. And we'll get a digital ID of our livestock so that once you take your cow to the slaughterhouse, you have a certificate in which you can show how you have bred your livestock, and that will ensure that you get premium shilling, or if you're exporting, premium dollar for your livestock. So it's a game changer for us. It will also solve a security issue that this country has struggled with since independence, called cattle rustling. That will now be something of the past with this system. Lastly, as an enabler, we want to make policies as government based on evidence, based on research. So we've partnered very closely with our research institutions, the international one, ILRI, the local one, CALRO, and our universities, to ensure that we don't just do research for teaching, but we do research that can be applied in industry, so that we can use that research to guide, if it's fodder and pasture production, what varieties should we use? If it's breed improvement, what should we do? If it's vaccinations for our vaccine producers and manufacturers, how are we able to get this to market and do research for improved vaccines quickly and bring down the cost so that our farmers can be able to put more money in their pockets? So ladies and gentlemen, a lot is going on in our livestock sector, and I just want to assure all of you that government has a very strong focus under our bottom-up economic transformation agenda on livestock, because we understand that livestock is a very easy way to distribute wealth and reduce the gap between the rich and the poor. So we are committed. We'll work with all of you. I just want, as I conclude, to thank the organizing committee who organized this third Meat Expo with Mr. Makoha here, and your co-chair from the Nation Media Group, and all our other partners, exhibitors, sponsors, the industry for just coming to be with us today and over the next 3 days. Asanteni sana, we don't take your presence here for granted. I bring greetings from our minister, the Honorable Mithika Linturi. Tomorrow we have a very big field day in Meru for the Meru Dairy Cooperative, Meru Central Dairy Cooperative, which His Excellency the President will be gracing in Meru, where our ministry is putting together, through the Kenya Dairy Board, 20,000 farmers to sensitize them about our dairy industry and what it is we'd like to do to expand dairy as a priority value chain under our economic transformation agenda. So we agreed today to split so that I can officiate this function where he was supposed to be giving these remarks, and he goes to Meru to prepare the ground for the farmers and for His Excellency the President. So he brings his greetings, and he assures you also as a livestock subsector, all his regards and his commitment in growing this subsector. With those very, very many remarks, I'd like to wish you a good 3 days of networking, of learning, of closing deals, of ensuring we're able to connect the dots all the way from production, enhancing our value addition. I realize there's a lot of technology and meat processors who are exhibiting here who can really help the farmers offtake their products much quickly. and also market linkages through Chemlec. My friend Nick spoke here earlier. You're doing a good job in promoting export of our products. Let's just ensure that the quality is guaranteed always, and that we don't let down our customers abroad who have a lot of faith in our meat. I hereby now declare the third Kenya Meat Expo 2024 officially open. Asanteni sana, and may God bless you all.
Thank you, Honorable PS. I would like to ask you to first take the stage because we're just calling the panel right now. Let's appreciate Bona PS as he takes the stage. Sorry. You have the liberty to sit wherever you please, sir. Allow me to ask the protocol team to also help with a bit of reorganization of the stage here while I invite all the other panelists who now are going to give us the key discussion points for us to begin the conversation around the meat sector. Ladies and gentlemen, next on stage, who is also going to be on the panel is Dr. Sarah Ashnot Osia, PhD, Project Lead, Resilient Africa Feed and Fodder Systems, RAFS, AU IBA. Let's appreciate Dr. Sarah, all the way from Uganda, but loves Kenya so much. Up next is Chloe Stahl-Lane from Gatsby Africa Livestock Program Director. She'll be joining us on stage to also discuss this. Chloe, most welcome. Andrew McCown is next. He spoke earlier here, a Director of Resilience and Food Security, Feed the Future Coordinator for USAID Africa, for USAID Kenya and East Africa. Most welcome, Andrew. Right there. And last but not least, Obai Khalifa, Deputy Director, Agriculture Development, Africa Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He joins us also on the stage. And I see he is a liberal like myself. I do not like official truths, forgive me. Ladies and gentlemen, we fairly know what you handle in the livestock sector, but I just allow 30 seconds each of introduction and what you do and your role in the Meat Expo this year. 30 seconds, please. We'll start from Halifa. I think it's on. Try again. Meanwhile, as we start the panel, please remember this is not a lecture. This is a conversation we are having. Prepare your questions, your responses, your comments, and your general views about the industry so that we have a robust conversation. We came here for you. Mr. Khalifa?
Hello, good morning, everyone. All protocols observed. My name is Ubay Khalifa. I work for Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Our foundation was established in the year 2000 upon the belief that all lives have equal value. And I work within the Agricultural Development Program. I am the Deputy Director for Agricultural Development in Africa, and I will be happy to share more details later. Thank you.
Great.
Good morning again, everybody. My name is Andrew McCown. I work for USAID, based here in Nairobi. I'm the Feed the Future Coordinator for Kenya and East Africa programming. So all of our resilience and agriculture and food security programming, both in Nairobi and in the region in East Africa. I'm the director of our Resilience and Food Security Division that is within our Economic Growth Office. It's a very, very complicated structure that I'm happy to talk to you about later if you care to know more, but I'm happy to be here.
Great. Dr. Sarah?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Ashanut Osia, and I'm the team leader for the Resilient African Feed and Fodder Systems Project, where Kenya is one of the core countries. Feed and fodder is 70% of the cost of production. And yet this is an area where across Africa, we have not made serious progress. So this is an area that we are addressing, and we hope that we have better outcomes for our livestock industry, but also to expand this so that more people can eat meat. Meat should not be a luxury good.
Yeah.
it should be a dietary choice. It is an essential nutrient. It's high density vehicle for essential nutrients, and we feel that everybody should have a right to be able to afford meat. So we start from the biggest input, which is feed and fodder.
Great. Bwana Piers?
Yeah, good morning again, everybody. My name is Jonathan Mweke, the Principal Secretary in the State Department for Livestock Production, Livestock Development, which is in the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development. I look after the livestock sector for the country, and my role here at this expo is to put all of you together. Thank you.
Looking after cattle, quite literally. Lastly, Chloe?
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Chloe Stolane from Gatsby Africa. I lead our livestock sector program. Gatsby Africa is funded by the Gatsby Charitable Foundation of Lord David Sainsbury, and we're committed to sector transformation in East Africa. And we work in different sectors where we see there's huge opportunity for competitiveness, for inclusion, and for resilience. And we see livestock as a key sector of one of these. And I'm excited to be here to discuss more about this sizzling experience.
Great, and I'll start with you on this conversation. Our discussion should run for about 1 hour or so. This is for the audience. I hope you prepare your questions once again, and we'll have about 40 minutes of responses from all the panelists, and then we'll now usher you in the last 20 minutes for question and answer, quick fire comments, and anything in between. Chloe, let me start with you. Gatsby Africa as an enabler and as a supporter of so many facets of the industry, I am sure you do research and you are in touch with the people on the ground on what is happening on a daily basis. Apart from just the obvious mentions of market access, feed and fodder, drought situation, what other challenges are you noting in the market that are limiting the growth of the meat and livestock sector to where it potentially should be?
I'll say that even beyond challenges, we have incredible innovation in the livestock sector. The majority of our livestock sector, as we know, our meat comes from our pastoralist regions. And our pastoralists have been producing meats for thousands of years in very difficult environments with irregular rainfall. We've seen pressures and challenges that you're referring to coming up over time, but we see even more that there's huge opportunity now as we have a growing population, growing urbanization, growing demand for meat, wealthier Kenyans, to increase and improve and build on that solid foundation that we have. So I think we need to recognize not only the challenges, but also where our strengths are. And if we move from a place of our strengths, we can be very competitive and we can achieve increasing production in the way we heard about is needed this morning, in a way that includes all of our different producers.
Great. We're going to talk about those trends in a while. Let me bring in Dr. Sarah from AU IBA on this. Dr. Sarah, we have data here that over 8.9 million livestock in the Greater Horn of Africa region alone were lost due to drought and so many other issues revolving around feed and fodder sector. Now, this is only data that we have, and it is spanning about 5 years or so. Just paint for us a picture and quantify how significant this is in terms of making a business case for having feed and fodder as a key component of livestock production.
Thank you very much, George. I want to say that for us, when we started to look at the feed and fodder issues, we started by looking at what was most visible, and that is the animals that were lost. It's anywhere between 9.5 to 10.5 million livestock that were lost in the Greater Horn of Africa region. That's over $2 billion worth. However...
2 billion?
Yes. Okay. However, when we went to actually look at what were the losses, we were shocked that figure of 10.5 billion livestock lost is equivalent to only 0.15% of the actual losses that were incurred in the region.
So the full picture has not been painted yet?
Not yet. Okay. When we looked at the loss of body condition, and this was done by Kenya stuff on themselves.
Okay.
They looked at the loss of body condition, 60% body condition, and they multiplied it by the total livestock units in Kenya. It came to a third of Kenya's GDP. That's what happens when you have a drought, when you do not have feed for your animals, is it wipes out a third of your GDP, basically, equivalent to a third of your GDP. That's where you start feeding your animals again. That's how much investment is lost. But that was not enough. Kenya had 22 milk processing units out of 69 closed down. A third of the processing capacity closed down. We looked at the number of people who lose jobs, who lose livelihoods, and we multiplied that. We looked at a number of other issues. We looked at, for example, lost opportunity. The way we discuss meat is by purchasing power.
Yeah.
You have to have purchasing power to buy meat. That's how we define the market for meat. Actually, if you look at the biennial review report that was presented to our heads of state and government this year in February, it made a very distinctly difficult statement to swallow. It said that since 2015, Africa has failed to make significant progress in addressing food and nutrition security. And that for us is very damning or a difficult situation that we have. Around the world, 60% of grain is dedicated for livestock production. We are now saying that is the winning formula. Unless you can feed your animals, you cannot feed your people. Because around the world, it is 60%. Well, you can look at issues of climate change and reduce that to 40% is what is needed, because there are some people who are eating excessive meat. However, to feed your people, you must first feed your animals. 2/3 of arable land around the world is dedicated to livestock production. How much of our land is dedicated to livestock production? Much of it is being taken away. We are not looking at it as productive land. I think this week or last week, I saw an adage that said, grass is the biggest crop globally. Do we think like that? In fact, Africa is the only region globally where we have a problem between feeding people and feeding animals, grain. Yeah. Because I think we only grow 5% is dedicated to growing animals. So these are some of the issues that we want to raise. Kenya is one of the few countries that is making significant progress to address stunting and other malnutrition, but it is still at 17%. Stunting is 17%. We have countries like Madagascar where they have 79.9% of their children stunted. We are now saying that these figures, there are 20 countries that have high levels of stunting. We are now saying that meat is essential to address that stunting. And the market now must address itself to those development objectives. And this is why we say this is an economic sector. This sector is a multi-billion-dollar sector. Billion-dollar sector. And Kenya is one of the big boys in this game. This sector is a billion-dollar sector in Kenya. But are we harnessing it to its full potential? You cannot harness it to its full potential unless you address the single biggest input, which is feed and fodder.
Great. Let me bring in Andrew from USAID on this one, because you work with Feed the Future. She's made a nutrition case and tied it very closely to the production element. So sort of an end-to-end, downstream, upstream sort of scenario. What programs is USAID employing with the communities you work with currently to ensure that farmers are enlightened fully on the importance of feed and fodder, even as a business component in their farming process?
It's a great question. Our current programs, maybe I'll just start. We are in a bit of a transition right now with the Feed the Future portfolio at USAID, where we have, excuse me, a generation of activities and investments like our livestock market systems activity, that are coming to a close somewhat soon. A new generation of activities and investments will be coming online in the next couple of months that represent $100 million cumulatively of investment over the next 5 years, broadly speaking in the agricultural space. We are laser focused on the point and on the demographic that you mentioned though, and that is how, and this is a question that I think challenges us and challenges all development partners. How do we respond to the need to catalyze and leverage private sector investment, downstream investment with agro-processing, big buyers and traders, and make sure that the job creation and the wealth created through those partnerships and through those enterprises accrues at a lower level and accrues at the household level to drive nutritional incomes and influences at a household level to drive animal husbandry practices and, to your point, production of fodder and forage. It is a challenge, and it's something that I think we are braced to do. I think we see a willing partner in the private sector, just like we do with county level governments and just like we do with ward level partners at the county level, to make sure that the investments they were making at higher levels actually make their way down to the households and influence that kind of decision making. It is a challenge. I think it's something that certainly USAID can do better at, and I would dare say most development partners can do better at. But that has to be the focus moving forward in all of our next and iterative investments that we make in food security in Kenya and across the world. So.
Great. Let me bring in Mr. Khalifa on financing, particularly of the farmers who are in livestock sector. There are so many things that are currently impacting financing, especially from a risk analysis point of view. So we are talking now, more than ever, we are now talking about climate change and how that is going to impact financing towards these farmers. How perhaps do you recommend that farmers be supported to be able to be bankable, as I would call it, for the purposes of this session? Remember, it's a business meeting. Entirely, we have to focus on how to get the dollar. So how do we prepare farmers to be bankable, even from a point of their production? And I'll bring in P.S. Mweke on this one shortly, considering he's mentioned about the digitization of the process. But given the fact that we are faced by drought and very unpredictable weather patterns, which may impact that key risk element in financing, business has to continue somehow. There has to be growth. Things have to be scaled up. What or how do these farmers get prepared for an opportunity for the banks to give them an ear on that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I think, to me, it's all about changing the narrative.
Sure.
I don't think we do have lack of money.
Yeah.
We totally agree with Andrew. I think it's more about how we are actually engaging as development sector, as private sector, and as government. My maybe invitation to each one here in the audience, just imagine yourself, you are a pastoralist. You are living between the opportunity and the conundrum. So in one hand, you are actually contributing more than 90% of the meat in East Africa. And then, on the other hand, I think my sister here, Dr. Sarah, can correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe less than 8% of the revenue from livestock gets invested back in East Africa or in Africa in general. Another part of the equation is you bring huge contribution, obviously, to the economies, to the GDPs. You are also, from climate point of view, you are making use of Africa's harshest regions.
Yeah.
You bring positive contribution also to the grazing land. But you are accused by the global north that you are responsible for methane emissions.
Yeah.
That's part of the narrative. And then the other here story is all the investments which are coming to the pastoral regions are not coming in the form of private investments. They don't look, we don't look at the commercial aspects. We have been doing this for years, and we haven't seen the opportunity. We have only seen the pastoral system through the humanitarian lens. And I think by doing that, we have actually exacerbated the situation. So going forward, I think plenty of opportunities for us to look even from climate adaptation point of view. You know, less than 1.7% of the climate funding goes to adaptation to the small scale farmers. That's a reality we are dealing with. I think also in terms of national plans for adaptation, they need to look at the pastoral system. Our philosophy now is that we need to engage more through private sector. And we know that it is not going to be easy because those farmers, producers, they don't have access to the primary markets. It takes them days actually to walk to a market, and they lose huge value by doing that. So unless we are able to engage with private sector, maybe to Andrew's point, develop those outgrower programs through which we increase the offtake rate. We increase the availability to Honorable Pia's earlier point about the fact that you need quality, you need quantity, you need consistency.
For sure.
So if you are able to work with different organizations, with private sector, with Chemleague, with all the slaughterhouses and the processors, and develop the program through which you will be able to increase the offtake rate and bring the financing also to the farmers through the private sector and through the local governments as well, we will not be able to get away now from being part of the problem and sustaining the problem. So I think the financing question is also related to the infrastructure that we have in the pastoral regions from digital accessibility point of view, because solving also the financing problem requires digital inclusion and financial inclusion. And that's going to be key for us to work with the ICT sector, with the finance sector, to make sure that we improve the access, not just to the social services, but also from financial inclusion point of view. So that's in a nutshell, I think, how we should be looking at it.
Great. Chloe, you have an intervention? Okay, great. And by the way, all the panelists are also allowed to intervene in any of the comments that will be mentioned here. Honorable PS, let me bring you in on this one. Earlier on in your keynote speech, you enumerated the plans that the government has, especially in supporting the farmers, the pastoralists, and basically the livestock value chain on this one. And I'm happy that finally, something that has been employed in wildlife management, the digital aspect, is now being brought into the livestock sector. I'd like us now to zero in on more granular detail around these plans, because earlier on it was just enumeration. Why is it important for a farmer to keep a proper inventory through the digital platform, and how much support will be advanced to them towards ensuring they keep the right number of herd to ensure supply on a year-on-year basis? Because if Nicholas, for example, is of taking 14,000 just yesterday, 14,000 heads, then how sure are we that next month when he comes again, he has another order, he's going to get such?
Digitization is important because we want to be able to collect the data of our livestock resources. You know, they say if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So our livestock identification and traceability system that we're going to be putting in place is number one, so that we can be able to identify all our livestock resources countrywide. Knowing where our livestock is allows us as government to prioritize resources that might be needed for that livestock. We will know where the livestock is concentrated, so that as we are making investments in water by the Ministry of Water, they can be able to prioritize the areas that a lot of livestock is. If we are making investments in rangeland management, we can be able to prioritize the areas where a majority of our livestock is. If we are making interventions in disease control, we are also able to identify where outbreaks are, and then put either labs around those areas so that our farmers can get the attention they need, veterinary attention they need, quickly for their animals. So this system does many things. It's able to register the animal. It's able to track vaccination regimes for the animal. It's able to track feeding regimes for the animal. It's able to measure the vitals of the animal, heart rates and things like that, so that you can be able to tell that your animal is not well even before the symptoms show up. Yeah, it's able to also create an identity of the animal for the farmer that would aid in recovery in the event of cattle rustling. It brings also controls in terms of slaughter, where we are putting in regulations. This system is going to come with regulations, which is law, really, on how to govern the movement of animals. So even when you go to slaughter, our slaughterhouses are not going to be allowed by law to slaughter animals that are not registered and are not accounted for. So if you steal somebody's cow, now you can't go and take it to the slaughterhouse. So it has immense opportunities and immense benefits for our sector. It also helps in trade, especially international trade. Yeah. Our president has been Kenya's chief salesperson. His many trips abroad have yielded enormous outcomes in terms of international trade. Kenya has, for the first time, and been the first African country to sign an economic partnership agreement with the European Union. So it's given Kenya and our products and services access to 27 countries in Europe with a joint GDP of about 17 trillion shillings. The door is open for us. What do we have to push through that door? Because these countries also have their regulations. Europe, for example, now have passed a law that they are not going to be importing into all of Europe, and this has passed by the European Parliament, will come into effect January 1, 2025, that if any livestock has had access or has been reared in a forest, that livestock now cannot go into Europe. So it has enormous implications. Traceability is also used globally now for food safety.
Yeah.
Countries want to understand the food that's coming into their countries, and they want to be able to trace that food in case of any disease outbreaks. For food safety issues, they want to trace those all the way back to the farm. And the only way you can do that, again, is with a livestock identification and traceability system. So for us to be able to expand our livestock trade, for us to be able to ensure that we have food and nutrition security, food safety, and security of our animal resources, and for us also to be able to plan on how we are going to bring services and infrastructure to our pastoralists, to our livestock keepers, then it's now very important and extremely urgent that we put in place a digital product. And that's why we have developed this livestock identification and traceability system.
Great. Let me bring in Chloe on this one. The market keeps on evolving. There's always changing, as you hear, changing regulations. How then do we prepare the farmer as a supplier of the off-taker to be ready to access these markets, whether it is local or abroad, market readiness, and what Gatsby is doing to support the farmer through that?
Yeah, so I think there's so much opportunity for investment, and we've heard about the private sector. Yeah. And indeed, we have so many private sector organizations here who have sponsored. I see Choice Meats, Halal, Ken Meat. We have Camp David, Nema Livestock and Slaughterhouse, Angole Beef. Lots of important meat industry companies here. What we don't yet see here, and where we need to improve as an industry, is to recognize that our producers, whether they are those pastoralist producers who have been producing for thousands of years, whether they're new beef farmers, new meat producers in the industry who are investing now, how can we also recognize their role as private sector actors to drive forward the industry? The vision can be set by the government, and there are some encouraging words that we're hearing from Honorable Moeke here. But we need all the private sector actors also to be part of that vision and to drive that vision forward. As Gatsby, we're looking at how to support innovators who are in different stages of production. So looking at how pastoralists are producing now, what are the investments that are needed from the private sector, from finance, as you mentioned, from the public sector to support that production, and then looking at the immediate offtake from pastoralist areas. Pastoralists primarily sell into live animal markets. Those animals are bought by livestock traders. They're bought by livestock farmers who then aggregate and add value to those animals and start to get us towards that consistency of supply that the meat industry is demanding. And so as Gatsby Africa, we're looking always throughout the value chain, who can we invest in, who's innovating, who's trying to push things forward, who's building on the strengths that we have as a country in Kenya and seeing what the future will look like. So I think we don't have all the answers yet, but we have very inspirational people in the private sector, in government, that together we can drive forward for this future that we're all thinking about.
Great. Let me bring in Dr. Sarah. We've painted the picture of how the situation is like. Quite gross, quite grim. 9.5 million livestock lost, and that is the only number we can identify as it is currently. So that means there's a fragmentation of data, one. Two, there's also need for us to advance that provision of more people, more investors in the feed and fodder sector, supplements, and the like. Practical solutions. Government is right next to you. Practical solutions now. Let's go.
All right. I think the beginning of this, Dr. Obai pointed it out. Change your narrative. Change how you think about this sector.
Mindset shift.
Again, we left Kenya and we left all the other countries that we're working with, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Cameroon, Uganda, to make these calculations themselves. Feed and fodder is an economic sector. I postulated that it's 1% to 3% for Kenya. No, the Kenyans came back and told me, no, this is 7% of, I don't remember, it's agriculture GDP or GDP.
Yeah.
This is an important sector that needs to be recognized as an economic sector of strategic importance. That needs to be done. The first thing is, for Africans, we look at rain is equal to feed. And that sets us for inefficiency.
They didn't hear you. They didn't hear you.
Rain is equal to feed. Once it rains, we say our animals are okay. But if you look at the body condition of all our animals, they are perpetually hungry. They are perpetually underfed. They are perpetually inefficient. We despise our genetic resources that we have in Africa. And for me, it bleeds my heart because when you lose 10.5 million, the level of genetic resources you've lost, breeding over 40 years, you cannot recover it. We've just been eroding our genetic resource base. But go back to that simple equation. Rain is equal to feed. No, it is not. We are not feeding our animals to their production targets. We've had people in our meetings stand up and say, when you feed our local indigenous breeds, they will give you 8 liters of milk, not 1 liter. We need to question these things. We need to feed our animals right to satisfy their needs for production, for maintenance, for reproduction, all of this. That's why it takes us 6 years for an animal to mature, which should mature in 2 years. Yes. So we are not allowing for full potential. Secondly, we are disaster-based. Our livestock sector is disaster-based. We are afraid of droughts. And now floods have come to challenge us.
Yeah.
Because drought is long and winding. We actually predict it 2 years before, but it always catches us out of step. However, floods have challenged our thinking around that. We have based ourselves, we did an assessment of 42 countries, a survey, and the countries responded. Not a single country has a feed and fodder authority of the 42. But some have a drought authority. However, if you tackle the issue of feed and fodder, will you care about droughts? In the US, dairy has moved into the Californian desert because they will bring the feed to the desert and feed the animal. So we need to move our early warning system from being based on animal condition, body condition, on when a drought is coming. You need to move it back into the feed and fodder sector. You need to take your inventory. It gives you a balance sheet. Yeah. We've had a balance sheet of 70% deficit. What does that mean? Out of your 10 animals, you can only feed 3. You do not have this in the crop sector. You cannot get a country where you can only feed 3 people out of 10. But we do that for our livestock sector. And when you have that deficit, you don't issue a disaster warning. That is the question. When you have that deficit, it is a point status data, but it has implications for before and after. But when you say that you have a deficit where you can only feed 6 out of 10 of your livestock, it means you must take serious action. You need to have a disaster warning, not to wait for the animals to start to die. And remember, from our calculations, out of all the failures that we have in the livestock sector, the loss of livestock is equivalent to 0.15% of those losses. The rest of the losses are actually pegged to the fact that you have not paid attention to your feed and fodder sector. So, ideally, it should be that when you have a proper utilization of your inventory, your national feed balance, you should now have a way to forecast against that. It says, when you have a 10% deficit, this is the remedial action you take, which you take in the crop sector. In the crop sector, if you have a 10% deficit of maize in this country, by law, you're supposed to take a certain action, I imagine. It's regulated because you already mean you can only feed 90% of your people. Who is supposed to go hungry? But when we have a 10% deficit for livestock, we do not, it's not regulated, we do not take a step. This is not right. Because that means those are 10% of your citizens who cannot think, who cannot contribute, who are frustrated. You see, so they should be taken. I'm not speaking only to Kenya, I'm speaking to Africa. Because out of that study, for 42 countries, those are the findings that we found. We say when you have a 10% deficit, say investment opportunity. And this can only happen with end-to-end contracting. Because we believe that rain is equal to feed. It is not. It's not enough to do the production you want to do. Because of that, Africa is the region where livestock source foods are luxuries. You do not walk into a supermarket and say, I will buy cabbage, tomatoes, onions, sukuma wiki, ugali flour, and meat, and chicken, and eggs. No. You stress over when you will buy meat, chicken, eggs. It's not a choice anymore. It's a luxury because of the cost of production. It can only be changed by contracting. Because people who produce feed and fodder have a dilemma because when it rains, people say, we don't need to buy their feed and fodder. But your animals are not getting what they need, and your human beings are not getting what they need. So we need to move away from a climate disaster paradigm. It is important to address drought issues. It's important to address flood issues. And by the way, much of the flooding is because we have neglected our rangelands. I feel the pain, especially for pastoral areas. They come from a horrible drought. As soon as the drought is over, it rains, and they are flooded, because the water recharge systems are broken, because we're not mending the land from which we are mining a billion-dollar industry. We are not reinvesting into it. So there's a lot you can do by addressing feed and fodder properly, and then it starts to address this. But you must contract until we start to think differently. that rain is feed. No, we start to think, my animal can produce this amount of milk.
Yeah.
Therefore, I need to feed it like this. So I will get some from the rangeland, but the rest I need to buy the fodder. I can grow my animals for 2 years, sell them to a feedlotter, and have my money. I think then the stabilization comes in, especially for pastoral areas.
Andrew, I'd like to bring you in on this one. We've spoken largely about the international market and the standards that we need to meet, particularly for that. I'll bring in PS at one point also. Do we have a standard for Kenya? You'll answer that later on. But a big part of nutrition also has to do with the quality, and quality cascades down now to the standard of meat. Is there a recommendation, or we just eat what is there? And how do we solve that from a point of traceability of the animal's history from what it's been feeding and up until the offtake period?
To me, it was mentioned before, it's about seeing private sector all the way down.
Yeah.
So if we're concerned with quality control and we're concerned about traceability, and I would say development partners in particular have been guilty of this in the past and maybe somewhat still.
Yeah.
But private sector is not downstream with the buyers and the traders and at the marketplace. That's at the farm level. It's at the household. It's with the pastoralist who's actually managing the animal and practicing good animal husbandry. So until we kind of break that mold of thinking that here's private sector and then let's get them to connect down here to get the good standards and practices kind of imbued at the farm level, I don't think we'll do it very well. We have to start treating pastoralists and farmers in whatever sector we're talking about that we care about when it comes to full traceability for quality assurance and food safety, treating them as businesses in private sector. It's really no different. It's just a different scale. So the same kinds of training, the same kinds of investment can be happening at a different scale. What's needed then at that point is that kind of connectivity to bigger private players that can influence and push market signals down to the household. I think somebody mentioned about how difficult it is for a small enterprise, a farm household, in other words, to get to market, to get market information. So that's a disconnect, but that's not to say that those folks aren't private sector and aren't able to do that kind of investment. So we need to be thinking differently as development partners, and I think all of us, about where one actor starts and stops, and instead thinking about them as just playing at different levels of the same marketplace.
Great. Let me bring in Khalifa on this one. We've spoken largely about meat, which I think has been fairly addressed. There is the hides, the skin, hooves. There's so much in the value chain that has not been handled. We've not even talked about halal stamping. We've not even talked about the cargo transportation. The value chain is so huge that if we possibly talk about it enough out there and we address it and we present the opportunities for people, not everyone would be looking or scrambling for, let's go all of us export meat. Talk to us briefly about the missed opportunity around the hides and skins and the other bit of the value chain apart from the meat in the livestock sector.
Thank you, Brian. I think it's very difficult to think about each one of those areas in isolation from the rest.
Yeah, true.
I think it requires really a kind of integrated approach towards investments in the livestock sector.
Yeah.
For example, if you don't have a proper identification and traceability system, you are prone to practices which would just render your hides really irrelevant.
Yeah.
The other thing is also related to the way we are investing. In the past, I think as development sector, we have been investing a lot in infrastructure, building slaughterhouses, throwing, capex investments in pastoral areas and thinking that would actually work. It would make things happen. But to me, that is not the solution. If you don't have a proper business model that would allow the farmers to have the incentive to be part of the formal market and at the same time without compromising their income, without compromising their nutrition, and to see the value in all the activities that will happen in the slaughterhouse. Very soon those slaughterhouses will just become like a graveyard of development sector. So to me, I think the point is, if you are able to invest through private sector, reducing the distance between the producers and the processors and the aggregators, all the players who are adding value, I'm not talking about the ones who are part of the value chain without any meaningful contribution. That would create the incentive eventually for all the players to be part of this. But again, even if we are talking about heights, even if we are talking about different value addition, it will not really happen without having an integrated approach from health interventions point of view, from food safety point of view, from the branding or the marketing of the Kenyan meat brand point of view.
Exactly.
And recognizing that lucrative markets in the future are not going to be only the export markets. I think we do have a growing middle class in Africa. We do have opportunities to, with value addition, to address the national also demand in our countries in Africa. So I think being able to do the catch-up as development, as private and as government will enable us to be able to reap all the benefits of the value addition without thinking about one specific sector in isolation from the rest.
Great. The last question, I want to address this onto the PS, because we're making a case for the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, the startups. Young people also want to get into this, and I'm fortunate to be one of them who's been exporting. But there's so many hindrances or barriers to entry. We are talking about there are no provision of common user facilities. As a practitioner, I have been able to go and see some of these slaughtering points, Nema, and then there's another one in Juja, which is doing pretty well. What kind of support is the government putting down to ensure that if we are onboarding more younger entrepreneurs, we provide for them maybe common user facilities as we see the export promotion EPZ is doing in countries like DRC and the others? We're talking about licensing, common user facility, refrigeration, and such kind of things. What's the government doing to empower more young people to get into this as a case for the startups?
That's a very, very good question. We have more than 2,100 slaughter points around the country.
Sure.
They are graded into class A, B, C, depending on where they are and what kind of slaughter that they offer. But what we are planning as government, especially to now begin to get consistent supply, we've put in an intervention of feedlots. And we think feedlots will be a major game changer for us in dealing with the feed and fodder question. We are working with 31 counties to build 450 feedlots of finish and fattening centers, in which then we will be able to aggregate livestock from the villages into the feedlot for finishing and fattening, and then for offtake into the market. We are encouraging our young people to form cooperatives so that they can run these feedlots as community feedlots. These cooperatives will be supported by veterinary doctors and animal health assistants. So we've mapped up the entire 31 counties, and we have assigned one vet to 1,500 animals, and one animal health assistant to about the 4 animal health assistants will do about 6,000 farmers. What this will do is, and we're calling them agripreneurs. They will ensure that they give the extension service to the farmer in terms of inputs, what feed, what nutrition, how do you get productivity, like my sister from AIBA said, how do you make sure that you're getting the maximum production from your livestock investments? How do you make sure that you're dealing with animal husbandry, animal health, and all those things to ensure that the farmer gets maximum productivity? So for example, if your cow was 150 kilograms,
right? You'll be able to get this much money out of it.
Yeah.
But if we could now take that cow into the feedlot, feed it for 3 months, give it the right inputs, the right care, it'll add 1.5 kilos a day. So it can double its weight in 90 days.
Yeah.
Which means double the income to the farmer. And that vet, that animal health assistant, that agripreneur, as we are calling them, would get a commission from that. They'll get a commission from the feed companies, the people who are selling the silage or the feed, if it's processed, the concentrates, will give them a commission because they're like agents or distributors to distribute to the farmers. The veterinary production companies will give them a commission.
Yeah.
Again, for ordering veterinary medicine, for ordering vaccinations, for them to deliver to the farmers. And then they will also work with the farmers to make sure that there's access to market. So that while the farmer is getting all these inputs, once they offtake their animal, then the cooperative can deduct that input from them. So it's a whole sustainable cycle that government has put together to make sure that we can really now focus on the smallholder farmer, increase their production, increase their productivity, and make sure that they're able to produce for the market, link them to the market so that they can realize the benefit of all the work they've been doing to rear the livestock by putting money in their pockets and enable them to grow. Financing has been a big issue in our country, and you've seen government really de-risk this through the Hustler Fund. It started off with 500 shillings. I'm aware of people now even getting 500,000 shillings because you borrowed 500, you did a small trade, you doubled your money, you paid back, now you're eligible
through the
for
cooperatives,
1,000.
yeah?
Yes, now with the cooperatives, the Hustler Fund started only as individual.
Yeah.
But on October 20th last year, the president now launched the group and the cooperatives Hustler Fund, which is from between 50,000 to 1 million shillings. So these cooperatives now can have access to that money at, 8% interest rate, which is a fraction of what you'd get from banks or commercial lending.
Okay.
So that now they can be used to expand their businesses, get more stock, put the right inputs to get that productivity. You saw the other day, His Excellency President Ruto also put an injection into the Agriculture Finance Corporation and has availed an extra 2 billion shillings for onward lending to entrepreneurs to be able to go and also ensure that they can increase their agricultural production.
Sure.
Last but not least, I mentioned during my address the Kenya Development Corporation.
Yeah.
This is specifically for value chain actors, value addition, feed and fodder production. KDC, Kenya Development Corporation, is giving concessional loans through a project in my state department called Drive, which is funded by the World Bank. Again, for onward lending to small, young even. So there's a lot of stuff that government is doing to be able to enable. In terms of export protocols, the Director of Veterinary Services is here, Dr. Zegele. He's the one who gives the export permits.
Yeah.
He's the one who makes sure that we meet the protocols so that our meat is accepted. You heard Nick Ngahu saying that we have a problem with Qatar.
Yeah.
I sent this DVS's team.
And Egypt too. That market too needs to be unlocked.
Yes.
Yeah.
But specifically, at least we're exporting to Egypt. Maybe there's some more work that needs to be done.
Okay.
But Qatar banned us because of foot and mouth disease a few years ago, and we are unlocking that. I did send the DVS and his team, together with private sector, to Qatar. I believe it was in March, to go and unlock this. I'm aware their Minister of Agriculture and their Minister of Health are working on it. Soon, that market will now be available to us for export. So we also have the DVS ensuring that he regulates the quality that we are creating so that our products are accepted abroad.
Great. Let's appreciate our panelists. That's where we end it at. That's where we ended it for the live broadcast. Thank you so much. If you're joining us from home or wherever it is you're watching around the world, this has been the first panel of the Kenya Meat Expo 2024, happening right here in Nairobi, KICC. We are here in person for the whole of the 3 days. Today is the first one. We'll be climaxing on Friday. Please make a point of passing by. And that's why we leave it at for the live broadcast. Thank you so much. Keep watching NTV. We now leave you to normal programming. Asante sana.
This is NT.